Okay, let's begin. Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar where we'll be exploring developing a fundraising strategy for your heritage organisation. I'm your host for today. I'm Famida from Media Trust, tuning in from a very gloomy and icy London. Let us know in the chat which orgs and locations you're joining from. It's always nice to know who we have in the room. As some of you may already know this open webinar is part of the Heritage Digital Academy, a program which aims to improve the skills and confidence of 500 heritage organisations. Led by Charity Digital, Media Trust is working alongside Dot Project, Naomi Corn Associates and the Heritage Alliance to develop and bring you this tailored training. So back to this session, in a minute we will begin exploring the basic principles and methods of effective digital fundraising and the core elements of a digital fundraising strategy, so you can all begin developing an effective strategy soon, as well as some top tips and tools to help you achieve your fundraising goals. And lastly, before I hand over to Matt, I wanted to mention my colleague Sasha from Charity Digital will be available in the chat for any tech support or any other questions, but any questions directly for Matt can be popped into the Q&A box, which you should be able to see alongside the toolbar below. Let's see. Yeah, I can see someone's already put a little thing in there. And we'll set aside 15 minutes at the end of the session to discuss these. So I think that's all for me from now. So I can hand over to Matt from Reason Digital.
Hi everybody, great to be with you this morning. Also from a very dreary and gloomy Manchester in my case. So yeah, I'm just going to swap over some screen sharing for you so that we can actually see what we're going to be talking about. So whilst I do that, rather, just to let you know that it's really great for me if you use the chat box because it's quite lonely doing these presentations, frankly. Just sat on my own in my bedroom. So yeah, if you want to use the chat to introduce yourself to each other, that's a great thing to do. Also, ask questions. It's not rude to be asking questions in there whilst I'm talking. It's one of the few benefits of doing this virtually. So, take advantage of that. If you disagree with something I say, or you've got an example that supports what I say, or there's something you want to share with the group, do it, because we can all learn from each other as well as just learning from me. So thanks, Rebecca. It's nice to know I'm not alone. Great message. So yeah, this is all about developing a fundraising strategy for your organisation, specifically focused on heritage, some arts, some wildlife conservation. One thing you're going to notice is I've looked at all of your websites. So there's some examples from some of your websites that are built into here and some of your communications. So do keep your eyes peeled in case you're somebody that I have either picked on or highlighted as a great example of what to do for everybody. A bit of housekeeping. We're going to have about an hour of presentation, then about 15 minutes for Q&A. We might have maybe time for about 5 minutes more presentation than that. Obviously stay muted, but do use that chat button, and Familia's there in the chat if you need any help with kind of facilitation. We are recording this, but we won't record your face or what you're saying, so don't worry about that. So yeah, a brief note about me. So I am the co-founder of a social enterprise that works with charities to help them make digital things and make digital strategies and campaigns. And a few years ago, I wrote a book about digital fundraising based on the learnings from all of the campaigns that I was doing. You can see that there's a lot of large charities there that I've worked with. I work with a lot of small charities as well, and sometimes the learnings from those smaller campaigns and smaller charities can be even more valuable. So I'm going to synthesize a lot of what I've learned and give you my perspective on developing a fundraising strategy from that. So just briefly before we kind of dive in, so we're all on the same page, a little bit about digital fundraising. So digital fundraising is kind of growing year on year in the UK. So we just had the release of the Charities Aid Foundation UK Giving Report for 2021, and we can see that there's been a £900 million increase in digital in giving to charity over the last 2 years, from 2019 to 2020. And the majority of this increase is driven by digital. Which is no surprise given that digital is obviously something that's growing, but also because of the situation that we've all been in during that period. And COVID has done nothing except accelerate that change. We do research every year at Reason Digital about how people are giving to charity and how they're interacting with charities online. And we can see there's been a shift after the pandemic or during the pandemic around how people are doing that. So the most popular way to donate to charities online is to donate to a fundraiser, and actually not to the charity as a one-off or a direct debit. If you add up one-off and direct debit donations as one thing, then that could be seen as the kind of most popular way. But yeah, so we can see a real change in behaviour here, that more people are giving online, more people are sponsoring their mates to do stuff. So yeah, any kind of digital fundraising strategy needs to not just think about how to get people to click that donate button on your website, but how to encourage more people to choose your organisation as an organisation to kind of do sponsorship activity around, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We've seen a lot of changes in behaviour during lockdown as well. You can see some examples of those on screen, but just to highlight that there are more audiences doing more stuff digitally online now than ever before, thanks to the pandemic. So now is a really good time to develop this digital strategy to take advantage of the fact that there's more people available for more minutes of their day online. And we've seen that kind of reflected, I guess, and typified maybe in the phenomenal success story of people like Captain Tom Moore, who raised tens of millions of pounds for NHS charities together. That is a double-edged sword sometimes for charity fundraisers, I find. Like, that's great to see, but also it can feel a bit demoralizing sometimes to see huge successes, particularly huge successes for kind of medical charities. And we think, well, as heritage and culture organizations, how can we succeed when people are giving all of these funds to something that feels so much more topical around the pandemic? And the answer is hopefully going to be there for you in some of the tactics that we're going to cover in this presentation. So just a little on the basics. What do we mean by digital fundraising? I would define digital fundraising as any kind of fundraising activity that happens on a digital device. So computer, laptop, tablet, mobile phone, smart speaker, maybe even a smartwatch or a smart TV soon. So it's a very broad art. It's not just a donate button on your website, but quite a lot of the time we're thinking basically about how do we get people to click a donate button, be it on your website or somewhere else. It evolves all the time though, and there's different definitions of digital fundraising. So contactless giving sometimes gets thrown into digital fundraising because the devices that you use to give contactless are digital, I guess. I don't really lump it in with digital fundraising because I think it's got more in common with offline fundraising, because you need to be physically present with somebody for them to tap the card. That said, one of my favourite examples of kind of digital fundraising innovation, if you like, is when the Blue Cross started experimenting with contactless giving back in the early days when it was a new thing. And their kind of experiment with that was basically just to sellotape a contactless card reader to a golden retriever, like you can see on screen right now, and see whether that worked or not. And it did. I know I would pet that dog even if I had to do it with my debit card. So how do we get towards a digital fundraising strategy? Well, there's some questions to ask before we get there, I think, which is, what is the use of a strategy overall? Like, what's the point in doing this? And I believe that the point in writing a strategy or creating a strategy should be to create action, should be to create change within your organization. And quite often the strategy acts as a barrier to change, because we think, oh, we'll get around to doing that, or we'll get more results when we finally have our big perfect strategy. And I want you to kind of let go of that idea now. Digital fundraising is chaotic. Nobody really knows exactly what they're doing most of the time. Things are changing all the time. Things that you think might work end up not working. Success just kind of comes out the blue sometimes, and there's things that you can kind of exploit and build on. So crafting and finessing this perfect, detailed strategy can sometimes be a bit of a way to procrastinate from actually getting the job done. So I think it's good to have quite a lean, quite a light strategy, and to consider your strategy a work in progress at all times. What form should this strategy take? Does it need to be a really big document? Could it be a poster that's up in the kitchen? Could it be a series of post-it notes about what tactics you're doing? Could it be literally written on the back of an envelope? Could it be in your head? All of these things are completely valid ways to kind of create a strategy. And really it's thinking about, given your kind of learning and working styles, what's going to work best for you to make sure that you act on what you're doing. really the document just ends up being a kind of artifact quite a lot of the time of what thinking that we've done as part of the kind of process of creating the strategy. Remember, a strategy is not a document. It's a set of ideas about what needs to be done. And that could equally be in your head, on a poster, in a document. Should we have a separate digital fundraising strategy at all? A lot of what I'm going to sort of suggest are things that are effectively riffing on what a regular fundraising strategy has. And digital fundraising has become, in the last year or two, the most popular way to give to charity. Should you have a fundraising strategy and a digital fundraising strategy, because it makes it sort of sound like your fundraising strategy is non-digital, and that doesn't quite feel right. So those are some considerations for you. If you want to create a big old strategy, or you want to create a poster, then you can think about having a series of things kind of represented in that as a kind of basic template, and they're on screen now. You might want to screenshot this template, or you might want to kind of even take a little picture of your screen with your mobile phone. You'll get these slides afterwards, by the way, so don't worry about that if you don't know how to do that. But effectively, these are the kind of key things that I would say should be there in a digital fundraising strategy. What's the point? What's our overall goal? Are we starting out? Do we want to get our first 10 digital donations? Do we want to boost the amount of income? Do we want to find? Do we want to backfill a loss in offline income with a huge amount of digital fundraising income? Once we've set that purpose, we need to think about what objectives we need to achieve to meet that. So those could be things about getting like 100 regular donors, for example, as part of our fundraising mix. Then we need to think a little bit about our organization and ourself and our cause. So I'd be thinking about writing a little bit about what the cause is, who our organization is and how it relates to that cause, how much budget we have, and what the strengths and weaknesses of our organization are, particularly from a kind of donor perspective. So you might want to do a SWOT analysis. You then need to think about the audience. So who are we trying to reach? Our donors, who are they? What are their motivations for potentially giving to our organization and our cause? And what kind of digital life do they have? Where are they? Are they hanging out on Mumsnet? Are they Facebook users? Do they use email very much? Do they search for things on Google quite a lot? Learning about that audience and thinking about that audience will really help inform the next part of the strategy, which is what our offer is to them. So what kind of ways are we going to give them to donate to us? And what kind of channels are we going to use? Should we be on TikTok, or is our kind of donor base not really there, for example? The most important part of the strategy, I would say, is what the tactics are. So this would tend to be the meatier section of the strategy, which is a series of things that we propose to do, to try to experiment with, perhaps, to try and achieve those objectives. And often tactics are kind of joining, what we know about us and what we want with our audience. How do we reach our audience and connect to our audience through the channels? How do we get them our products and services? So a tactic might be to experiment with £1,000 worth of Google ads on search results for people searching for charity calendars, for example. And then, of course, no good strategy will be complete without a plan. It doesn't need to be very detailed, but actually, when are we going to try these things out and in what order? And when are we going to review the strategy to see whether it's working? So that might be quite overwhelming. But as I said, this is something to kind of take a bit of a screenshot of and to reflect on. There is a different way to do it that I find less overwhelming, that might work for you if you have a kind of different style. And I just wanted to give you a kind of radically different way to do digital fundraising strategy that I think can work quite well. And that is just having 3 things instead of all of those things. So one is, what is the objective that we're trying to get to? And rather than setting big tangible goals for that, like how many hundreds of thousands of pounds we want to raise or something, then what we need to think about is, where are we trying to get to? Rather than say 100 regular donors, maybe we can say we'd like to get a few more regular donors. That will be a more kind of flexible, more agile objective. The next thing that you might want to do is set a series of kind of experiments to just test the water with that. So you might think of, let's brainstorm some experiments now. So we want to get more regular donors. Well, maybe if we offered some kind of Friends of the Museum scheme, that could be a way to get more regular donors. Maybe if we tried some kind of subscription thing where people got a video about an object in the collection once a month if they subscribe. Maybe they could sponsor an object and that could be you know, for a monthly fee, etc. So these are things that we could experiment with, kind of ideas and messages around, talk to our donors, maybe even set up dummy pages to kind of see how many people click on them. And then once we've seen which of those experiments work, we might solidify some of those into key tactics that we're going to use, and actually put a lot of weight and some budget behind those things to really make them happen. So those are the kind of two ways that you can do digital fundraising strategy. And it's kind of like a spectrum from really thinking about a lot of things in advance, all of these things perhaps, to taking a more kind of fluid, agile, experimental approach where you let go of thinking a lot in advance and just try trial and error and experimentation. If you do try experimentation, don't make the mistake that most small organizations use, which is to try one experiment and it doesn't work, and then you write off digital fundraising in its entirety. So yeah, don't do that. Commit to a few experiments. So if we are thinking about what tactics we're going to use, or we're thinking about how we're going to experiment, there's 4 areas that I think of when I think about, you know, what I'm going to do with an organization to boost the amount of income that they're getting. And this can be maybe a helpful way for you to think about organizing that. So what we've got here is a matrix of the 2 different types of donations: direct donations to you, or sponsorship donations where people are getting donations on your behalf. And the other thing we've got is whether something's a kind of ongoing activity or whether it's a short, sharp, targeted campaign. And if you lay these out as a matrix, you kind of end up with 4 areas that can help us think about where we might want to kind of focus our energy, I guess. Because that's another part of a really effective strategy is, you know, you can't do everything. So we need to make sure that this strategy doesn't say 1,000 different tactics, 25 different ways people can donate, 30 different audiences. It's got to be realistic. It might just focus on 1 or 2 things, and that's absolutely fine. So if we look at this matrix, I would say that that what we've got here is this area being one of the most effective ways if you're after kind of quick wins. So I'll go through them all. You could have tactics that improve your website perhaps to boost passive donations directly to you. So that is people just stumbling on your website or looking at your opening times and then being exposed to the fact that they can donate to you. You could drive donations very deliberately through a campaign. So that might be like a Christmas appeal or a COVID recovery appeal, where you're a bit more targeted, you're pushing a particular message, and there's a time-limited thing. You could have an ongoing sponsorship thing where you have something always available on your website where you can, where people can, I don't know, do a bake sale for your organization at work, and they can just choose to do that at any time of year. Or you could do something where people could participate in an organized or semi-organized event where you're driving people to, I don't know, do a run to raise money for you, and we'll look at some kind of creative ideas around that. So that's some sort of stimulus for you to think about, you know, where should I focus my energies when I'm thinking about creating my strategy? And I would say if you're a bit unsure or you're looking for a shot in the arm, that this kind of driving signups to a sponsorship thing is generally the one that gives the quickest results. So that's a tip for you there. Moving on. So if you're already doing a little bit as well of digital fundraising, so this is not a strategy that you're writing just from fresh, you've actually experimented with digital fundraising, you've got a donate button on your website, or you've tried a campaign, you might also want to think about where it's going wrong if you're not making very much income. And one way to think about that I find very useful is to think about, well, what control do I have over this? And really, there's only 3 things when it comes to digital fundraising, no matter how, you know, confusing it is or how many different types of fundraising there are. You've kind of got the number of people that end up seeing the campaign that you're creating, or the donate button on your website, or your Just Giving page, or your crowdfunder. You've got the number of people that you manage to persuade to take you up on that donation offer. So perhaps you've got 10,000 people that see your website over the course of 3 months, and, you know, you manage to persuade a few, 200 of those perhaps to give. If you could increase the percentage of them that you can persuade to give, then that would result in some more funds. And lastly, there's how much they're persuaded to give. So if they're only giving a £3 a month donation, that's one thing. If they're giving you a, a £10-15 a month donation, then that's obviously going to be worth a lot more, particularly over time. Just a quick trivia question for those of you in the chat. What happens in a multiplication formula like the one that we've got on screen? So the number of people that come to our website or our campaign multiplied by the percentage of them that decide to give, multiplied by the amount that they decide to give, allows us to predict how much funds we're going to make. What happens if one of those numbers is 0? Can anybody sort of hark back to GCSE maths? That's right, John Ain, it's 0. That's one of the peculiar things about multiplication, is that it doesn't matter how many people are looking at it, or like how big and attractive the donation amounts are. If none of the people are finding the donation process or being persuaded to give, then that's not going to help. Equally, you could have a really compelling, appeal or campaign, but if you're not getting enough people to look at it, then it's going to produce pretty much nothing. The flip side of that problem is that if you can increase each of these things a bit, then that can have an outsized effect. So, we could double those, then 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, isn't it? So we end up with a really big effect. So yeah, thinking about these 3 levers can be very helpful in terms of understanding perhaps where things are going wrong if you're already doing some digital fundraising that doesn't feel like it's paying off. And that can perhaps inform your digital strategy about thinking about what you need to focus on. Is it reaching more people, or is it making a more compelling offer or product? I can translate this into kind of digital fundraising speak. So for those of you who are a bit more advanced and you want a bit more advanced content here, what we'd call these in kind of digital land is, we wouldn't say people, we would say unique visits. That's the number of times somebody looks at a page or a campaign. We wouldn't say decisions, we would say the conversion rate. That is the percentage of people we convert from being a visitor of something to being a customer or a donor. And we wouldn't say amount, we would generally say average gift. And then if you multiply those things together, you get the total amount of income that you are likely to receive off a campaign or a website. So just to work that through, 10,000 visits at a 1% conversion rate with £20 average gift would get £2,000 in donations. 10,000 visits sounds like a lot, but if you check how many people visit your website, it's likely that you have a few hundred or possibly a few thousand a day, even if you're a small organization. So actually that number of visits can be built up quite quickly if you're managing to successfully expose people visiting your website or engaging with your digital content to your donation appeals. The good thing about this as well is that you can reverse backwards from this. So if you've got a target for 2,000 in donations, you can play with those numbers using trial and error to see what you would need to do, what conversion rate you would need to hit, or how many people you would need to reach in order to get that amount. And that can help you decide whether the targets that you set in your strategy can be achieved. I'm going to give you a download at the end of this session that's going to help you work through those kind of sums and work through this strategy. So yeah, don't worry if you're not a maths guru. I've kind of broken that down for you in that download that I'll give you. So really, the process of digital fundraising, no matter kind of which product we use or whatever, is kind of that process. It's about finding people, convincing them to give, and convincing them to give an amount. And we can almost view that as a 3-step process, which you can see on screen now, where we need to attract people, we need to convince them to actually donate, and then once we've convinced them, we need to put them through a process that actually gets their card details off them and gets the money. And the way I sort of have thought about it for this presentation is really that people, persuasion, and product. So what we're going to do for the rest of the presentation is we're going to look at these 3 things, and we're going to look at working backwards from them. What kind of products can you make available digitally to get people to give money to you? You might already be offering some of these products, but you might be able to make them better. You might find a new product that really fits your organization that you want to experiment with that will be really effective for you. We'll then look at some tips about how to persuade people to actually take you up on that, to actually to buy that product if you like, to kind of give to that crowdfunder or that appeal or subscribe to that thing. And then lastly, I'll give you some tips about how to attract more people so that more people can actually see what you've got to offer and see those great persuasive messages. Does that sound good? Hopefully so. So what I'm going to do next is talk you through all the different fundraising products that you can have. It's a pretty comprehensive list. The idea of this is not to overwhelm you and sort of suggest that you could do all 25 of these things. the idea is to just give you some stimulus. So let this kind of wash over you, and some of these things might stick out, and in which case maybe write them down. And these might be things to think about committing to trying in your big fundraising strategy, or committing to have a bit of an experiment with if you're going to take a more agile approach. The first product then is what I'd call grassroots fundraising phenomena. That is your Captain Tom Moores, your ice bucket challenges, your no makeup selfies, all of that sort of stuff. And I would kind of exclude this, actually. It's the one kind of product that I wouldn't recommend trying to strategize for, because these things by their very nature are quite random, and they're very hard to kind of make happen and to engineer. Give us a heads up in chat if you've ever had like a trustee or a CEO or perhaps even your mum ring you up and say, I've got this great idea for a challenge. I've got this hashtag, and it's called the, I don't know, pour custard on your head challenge. And it's going to be like the ice bucket challenge. And it's going to be great because it's even easier and people love custard, right? You really can't recreate those things and plan for them. So don't make that the basis of your digital fundraising strategy. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail. Anyone else had that phone call or that chat with their kind of team? Do let me know in chat if you have. So the most basic kind of donation that you can kind of have is a link on your website to a one-off donation. So that's usually asking for card details and getting a one-off amount, and kind of that's it. So that's something, does everybody have that? Is there anybody that doesn't have the ability to donate on their website here yet? I know that some of you don't, because I've checked out all your websites. So this should be priority number one in your digital fundraising strategy if you don't have this ability yet. You can provide a physical incentive. Sometimes if you're asking people to give to you, you can kind of extend that by saying to people, oh, you'll get this kind of gift. So it could be where, they get a tour of something, or they get a thank you, or they get, something like that. That can boost the number of people that are giving money to you via a single donation mechanism. You need to be careful there that you don't spend more money on the gift than you get in the donation, though. You might have a regular donation mechanic, so that is where you're asking people to subscribe either to a recurring card payment or PayPal donation, or ideally asking them to subscribe to a direct debit sign up. And the reason I say that direct debit is the best is because people actually change their bank less than anything else in their life. They're more likely to have changed their job, their house, even their partner, than they have their bank in the last year. People just seem to stick with it for life. So do think about making that available if you can. There's certain donation platforms that will provide that ability. There's also services like Go Cardless, which allow you to set up an online direct debit form that have pretty cheap fees as well. A way to extend and boost the number of people that you might get signing up to a regular donation is to sort of position it or frame it as a membership or a friends scheme. That's a way to kind of productize it. I noticed that some people on the call, like National Trust Jersey and the People's History Museum, have those. I really like the People's History Museum Radical Supporters thing, because that ties in quite nicely with your brand and the kind of impact of the donation. So do think if you can offer any benefits in exchange for membership. Can you offer kind of free visits to somewhere? Can you offer some exclusive content? Can you even offer just like a Zoom call with one of your curators or experts? And those kind of virtual things, or the things that you're doing anyway, are obviously much more cost effective than things that you'd have to produce specifically for members. Like if you produce a mug or a tea towel, then obviously that's cutting into your donations. Whereas if you've got an event on anyway, and it costs you no more to kind of have a little bit of extra people there, then that can be a bit of a better way to do it. You can also collect text donations. So these can be quite good if around the kind of physical space. If you've got a physical space, you could set them up so that people can text a number. There's a great service called Donor, which I'll just put up in the chat, which allows you to kind of get these text giving codes. Bear in mind as well that a lot of organizations using text giving codes, the objective is not to have a £3 kind of donation, but it's to try and get people's kind of contact details and get consent to contact them, so that you can turn that £3 donation hopefully into something more regular. And that's what the larger organizations do, and they have a success rate of between 5 and 25% at upselling people that give a one-off text donation to a higher or a regular gift. You can also frame these donations, either a one-off gift or a regular gift, as a campaign or appeal. That is a time-limited thing that where the money might be in service nominally of a particular kind of thing, either, you know, to recognize the fact that there's a national day, or that it's Christmas, or perhaps there's a specific thing that you're trying to raise money for, like in this case a cathedral grand organ. So yeah, you can think about framing some of these things as a campaign, and we know that's a tried and tested method of generating more income. Similar to that, you can do crowdfunding as well. So crowdfunding is a little bit different. Crowdfunding always has a defined target, so appeals might not have a target, but crowdfunding always does. Crowdfunding is always time limited, it always has an end date, and crucially, crowdfunding is always in service of a very specific project where unless you meet that target, the thing is not going to happen. So it's a real way to kind of involve your donors and really make them feel special by saying to them, unless you give and unless we collectively meet this goal, we're simply not going to provide this service or open this new exhibition, or, you know, be able to kind of have the beehive in the grounds, or whatever it is. Crowdfunding appeals also often have physical incentives or virtual incentives to kind of encourage people to give more money than they perhaps thought that they were going to in the first place. And again, you've got to be careful not to spend more money on those than you plan to make. Don't neglect traditional sponsorship as well. Just because something's happening offline rather than digitally, like perhaps there's some people that are doing a virtual challenge event, a marathon, or a song-a-thon. You know, we will have all seen Owen Evans's a drumathon for children in need. You know, these things might not happen online, but actually you can use your website and you can use your digital communications, like your social media or your email, to tell people that they can do these things for you, and to get people to sign up to do them as well. You can also encourage people that sign up to do those things to set up a digital fundraising page, such as on Just Giving or on Facebook Fundraising, and that will help them raise more money for your charity and will mean that the money is paid directly to your organization as well. You can set up an e-commerce store online. So I know that quite a lot of you actually, I saw on your websites, are selling something. And e-commerce can be a great way to kind of raise extra revenue, so long as you make sure that you price your products so that you make a significant profit for them and don't just spend all the money that you get in the sale on producing and shipping the item. So I saw some really cool things to purchase on your websites, and gave me some ideas for some Christmas gifts for some of my friends. This is a great time of year to be pushing e-commerce. It seems like it's harder and harder every year to kind of buy meaningful gifts for friends, and you know, what could be more meaningful than something that helps support an organization to exist, that is preserving the kind of culture or heritage or environment that they really care about. So yeah, do think about framing your shop in that way. If you don't have a shop on your website, you can set up an eBay page really quickly and really easily, or you could use a service called Shopify, which I'll stick in the chat, which allows you to kind of quickly set up an online store that you can link to from your website. It allows you to brand it, and it takes care of a lot of the kind of technical headaches. There's also services that allow you to kind of export the headache of running an e-commerce store to a company. So for example, if you have kind of t-shirt or tea towel or mug designs, you can set them up on these services so that when somebody purchases it, that item is printed and shipped and you never see it and never have to touch it. Now, you make less profit from those because they charge more for that service, but actually if it's the difference between having a shop and not, then it can be a very good idea. And of course, particularly, you know, many of us will have access to photographs of beautiful environments and buildings. We'll have access to objects artworks, designs, and these may be things that can be printed onto things in order to kind of productize them to create income for your charity. A riff on that you can use as well is charity auctions. So where you've got like access to perhaps a higher value or rarer experience or product, you might want to have a charity auction. And this, you know, some good examples of this. So, you know, we've got an example from one of the charities I think's on this call, Top Artist Donate Work for Exclusive Online Auction by London Charity. So, you know, you may have access to people that are willing to give kind of items or artworks because of the nature of your work. You've also got things like Secret 7-inch. So I'm a bit of a kind of music nerd, so this is one that I really love. And they've got a bunch of artists to create unique record sleeves, and you can buy a record. You actually don't know which artist has created the record until after you buy it. So it could be a Damien Hirst work, or it could be something from, you know, a young up and coming artist, and you have no way to know until the thing arrives. And they just use eBay to sell those things, so that it's pretty cheap for them to kind of run that. But I think they raised £250,000 from their last thing, and all of the artists contribute to that for free. So you know, an incredible campaign there. You can also monetize kind of remarkable items or gifts or whatever using competitions and lotteries. So you can see that Teesside Hospice here have a lottery that they run every month. These are incredibly effective for hospices, actually. Many of the hospices that I work with raise hundreds of thousands of pounds per year from their lotteries. And many people on this call have a similar audience to hospices in terms of, you know, age and demography. So it perplexes me that more of you don't have lotteries. You can also have a competition where people can buy raffle tickets in exchange for potentially winning a prize, and that can be very effective. You might be able to get that prize secured from a kind of corporate sponsor or from an artist, or from somebody with a collection that's kind of willing to put part of it up as part of that prize. So there's some things to think about there. I noticed that some of you have what we call affiliate micro giving, where you can kind of get people to select your charity as a chosen charity on things like Amazon Smile, Every Click, Give As You Live, and you get a small amount, like a tiny sliver of what they buy using those services. For those of you that are using those, are those effective for you? Maybe share in the chat if you're willing to, kind of roughly how much you raise a year out of those. I know for most people that try them, they don't end up being that significant in terms of revenue. So, but that said, you know, it is fairly free. So yeah, £10 says Grace. There you go. Suppose it's 10 quid you wouldn't have had otherwise, right? You've got corporate digital partnerships, which are a different way perhaps to monetize a relationship with a company than that. So a couple of examples here are Revolut, which is an online bank. They created a literal gay card, a rainbow debit card, and you would get sent one of these rainbow Revolut cards for your bank account if you donated to ILGA Europe, which campaigns for LGBTI human rights. They raised a lot of money through that, and it was a relatively cheap thing for Revolut to do that got them a lot of positive PR. So, you know, are there any companies that you could kind of reach out to that you've worked with that have supported your organization before and do something fun like that with? There's also a game studio here that created a game experience where instead of doing the usual thing in a computer game, which is to be the soldier, in this you were a child trying to survive in a war zone. So it really kind of turned the kind of gaming tropes on its head, and this raised a significant amount of money for War Child. So these are two quite kind of big examples, but you know, particularly where you've got kind of digital companies, they can often reach a big digital audience. So they're really worth trying to have discussions with, to partner with. If you don't get anywhere with the first company that you ask, don't. You know, it takes sometimes dozens of emails to kind of end up anywhere, and particularly if you can find a link to their product or some reason why it makes sense for them to kind of partner with you, then that's always good as well. You know, is the founder interested in your subject? Were they founded in the same town that you're based in? You know, just anything like that to try and kind of get a bit of a hook in there. Many of you will be familiar with dedications from doing these offline, but you can also do these things digitally as well. So if you have grounds, you have objects, you have poems in your collection, it may be that you could kind of sell dedications to objects. And this can be a really good way to kind of monetize them. People particularly like buying these things as gifts or things in memory of people. So you can see a couple of examples here where the Westenberg Abbatorum has a map where you can sort of dedicate an acre of land to somebody. You've also got the Leaves of Life thing, which is quite common with hospices that they do as well, where you can kind of dedicate a leaf on this tree. You can sell both of these things digitally, and they can be very powerful at increasing your average gift amount. You know, people will pay hundreds of pounds sometimes for these things. You've also got sorry, my slides keep skipping ahead sometimes. You've also got virtual challenge events. So where we talked about kind of offline challenge events like doing a marathon, you can also do like a virtual challenge that actually involves digital. So it's not like a big event where everybody's going to it at the same time, but it's little individual events. In this case, we've got the museum at South Ken. They got people to use an app called Strava or Runkeeper, and invited them to run in the shape of a bird or a dinosaur or, you know, something like that. And you could share those on their website and raise funds, and everybody kind of did that challenge at their own pace, which was you know, quite a nice thing to do instead of like a big mass marathon. You've got Game Heroes from Macmillan. They regularly raise hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, getting people to do 24-hour video game marathons. So I'm definitely more built to do a video game marathon than actual running marathon, but that's allowed them to appeal to a whole new audience, and they use Just Giving for that. And one that I absolutely love from a small organisation, the Bike Project, which refurbishes bikes for refugees. They're getting people to cycle the same length, the same distance as refugees have to travel on some of the most dangerous routes, like from Calais to Dover, which I think is 51 miles. So you can get your friends to sponsor you to do a 51-mile cycle because that's the length of that route. And that just really nicely tied in that virtual challenge with their cause, because it's on a bike and it's a distance that's relevant to refugees. So I absolutely loved that, and it's raised tens of thousands of pounds for them during lockdown. You've also got sponsorship that might be led by supporters. So you've got you know, supporters might just come up with the idea and do a sponsorship thing themselves, and you've not even given them the suggestion or organised it. Providing them the opportunity to do that is important, and one really key way that you can do that is register for Facebook fundraising. I noticed that most of the people on this call don't seem to be registered for Facebook fundraising. If you're a charity that's registered with the Charity Commission, or you have an element of your organisation that is registered with the Charity Commission, then you can apply to Facebook to get access to what's called Facebook fundraising tools. If you Google that, you'll find the form. In a few weeks, that means that Facebook will give you the ability to give you and also your prospective supporters the ability to set up a fundraiser on their feed or on your page, which means that they can kind of tap up all of their friends to give money. And people regularly raise hundreds of pounds for charity every year on their birthday using this tool. So yeah, it's a really important way to fundraise for most charities these days. Stacey says that you've got a few problems applying for Facebook fundraising. They are an absolute pain to deal with sometimes. My advice is just to keep hammering it and keep trying, and do use the support email address and try and tweet about them as well. Tends to get a really quick response. I have had to do that to push to get some of my clients approved. Live stream fundraisers can be very powerful as well. So some examples of this that I really love are on screen right now. So I saw during lockdown the Trent Navigation pub. In Nottingham, they used to have a quiz night before COVID kind of scuppered it, and they just transitioned that online, and more people ended up connecting to it online than they could physically fit in the pub. They run it every week, and every week they encourage donations to their local hospice in exchange for people participating in the quiz. And they regularly made amounts, like you can see on screen, £354 a week for their local hospice. So that's, you know, that's just a small local pub. Are there any small local pubs that you could reach out to get to do a quiz like this in benefit of your organisation? Could you run one yourself? Another quiz early on in lockdown, a random company / individual did a virtual quiz about Friends, which just ended up taking off, the TV series Friends. Tens of thousands of people ended up viewing it, and they raised over £100,000 for NHS charities together. So, yeah, there's the you know, live streams can be very powerful. I think there's some particular forms of live streaming that are relevant to some people on this call, because some of you host events or run events. So, you know, I saw some examples where you can have, you know, you can have artists that are selling, you know, doing a live event for you that they would have normally done perhaps in a theatre. You've also got perhaps workshops. So I saw Urban Green Newcastle, who I think might be on the call, doing a Christmas wreath making session online, which I think is, you know, a really great idea. A really creative way to kind of do something live and sell tickets for it that's really participatory and appeals to a lot of people. You've got participatory events, so, you know, online quizzes, virtual tours, meet the author events, meet the artist events, meet the curator events, which can be a way to kind of, you know, either encourage people to donate or to get people to pay for a ticket. You've perhaps got non-live events, so maybe you've got recordings of lectures, recordings of tours, recordings of events that have happened within your space or within your grounds. You know, something about, I don't know, you might have a bee expert that's done a really great talk about bee conservation in the area that you look after. You could sell access to these things in exchange for a donation. You can those could be live and they could be non-live. So and you could do that in exchange for a donation, or you could do it in exchange for a ticket price. If you've sold tickets to events that have to be cancelled because of new restrictions that are coming for COVID, you can get people to kind of give up that ticket effectively as a donation, and that can be a way to protect your losses. One thing that I can see a few people doing on this call, which I absolutely love and wanted to give a shout out to, is subscriptions. So I noticed that you've got a professional costume hire going on at the Hampshire Cultural Trust. So you can kind of, you know, subscribe to that or give a donation in exchange for costume hire. Or you can subscribe to a book club at Shelterbox, which I thought was really cool. So kind of, you know, physical benefits, you know, subscribing to something in order to get something posted to you or to get things loaned to you is a really clever way to kind of make your donation ask more interesting. And I think something that's particularly accessible to kind of heritage and cultural organisations. And the last one, you'll be pleased to hear, because I've been through loads here, is Patreon, which is a way to get people to subscribe to you, to give you kind of the price of a coffee a month in exchange for some content. So if you've got like a YouTube channel, or you share like facts or blog posts regularly on your website, you could include a call to action to those to say, help support us to create more of these videos, more of these blogs about our fantastic collections or artworks, or, you know, or forests or whatever it is, by subscribing for the price of a coffee a month. And this will help fund our content creation work, and, you know, we'll give you a thank you every time we publish something. So, as I said, my intent with that was not to overwhelm you, but was to give you some stimulus, just to kind of wash over you, so you can think about all the different ways that you can kind of position your digital fundraising that's more than just doing a simple donation ask. What I now want to move on to, we've looked there at the product, the thing that's on the end of the hook. I now want to spend the rest of the session looking at how we get people to look at that, and how we persuade those people to actually take you up on that offer. So starting with people, the most important tip that I would give you is it's really worth investing some time in understanding who your audience is. So do you have data on the people that are giving to you digitally? Have you emailed them a survey anytime? Have you got people that have talked to those people and might know a bit about them, so that they could give you some clues about what motivates them, where they are online, what kind of topics they're interested in? And a way to kind of get this down on paper that's helpful for your strategy is to create what's called personas. And you can see some of these on screen now. These are pretend people that kind of typify one cluster of your audience. So you might have, I don't know, retired art enthusiast, for example, that we might call, Edith. And she might have been bought a smartphone by her grandkids, and she manages to use it for email and browsing the web and searching, but she's not on social media yet. She's always really interested in searching for content about her favourite artists, especially people helping to interpret those artworks, because she's always keen to relate to them in new ways. You can see how you can develop a whole kind of pen portrait of somebody here, and that helps make somebody very clear in your mind when you're thinking about writing your messages or thinking about how you might be able to reach that audience. You've probably got access to at least 3 types of channel digitally to reach your audience that you might not be thinking about. So you've got your website, which maybe has a news feed and a blog on there as well. That website will no doubt be being visited by people, perhaps people finding you on search engines. You've got your social media channels. I noticed that almost all of you had social media in some form or other. And you've got email. Many of you are using email, but not a lot of you had a formal kind of way that I can subscribe to your email newsletter. And I think that that's something that you should maybe change. So when you are asking for money, make sure you think about utilizing all of these channels, not just 1 or 2 of them. So an example, I noticed that we have somebody from Doncaster Libraries here. So I wanted to use this example. This is actually an example from quite a few years ago. So hopefully, it won't be too offensive to spotlight you as a bit of a kind of example of ways that things could be done a bit better. And this is by no means unique to Doncaster Libraries. This is just a really good typical example of some of the stuff that you see sometimes when people are starting out, trying really hard to raise money for their causes that they're very passionate about, is that sometimes it can kind of fail to connect with donors. So this is an example. You can see the kind of tweets that were being used years ago by Doncaster Libraries to try and raise money for saving the library. And I've kept hold of this example because I think it's such a typical example of what people instinctively do, which is to ask for money basically over and over again. And this doesn't really work. And I clicked through on these links so I could see what was on the other side of it. And one thing I found once I clicked on those links was that there was a great story of a young girl, and a photograph of a young girl actually, that had drawn a picture about what her local library in Doncaster meant to her. And it was really sweet and really touching. And I thought, oh, that kind of content would have been much better at connecting with the audience, to share things like that on social media and then actually make the ask off the back of that, rather than using social media to make the ask in the first place. So always remember, when you're using these channels, just because you really want money and you really want to raise money for your important cause, you've got to think about still being interesting in order to attract an audience. Yeah. One way that you can be interesting and grow your audience is actually to let go of any thoughts about making money at all, and to grow your audience by providing interesting content that's just going to attract them back to your website, attract them back to your social media channels. Because then when they do visit those websites and social media channels, they'll actually be exposed to your donation asks. If all your website and all your social media is donation asks, they've got no reason to come back, because all you're doing is pestering them for money. Some larger charities that are good examples of this, British Heart Foundation are a really good one. They do things like 5 healthy ways to serve strawberries in the summer, or how to deal with anger, or it's 70 years of the NHS, here's a celebration, or here's a letter to myself about what I've learned as a mother living with heart failure. And these things might feel like pretty irrelevant to the process of raising money, but actually they're very relevant. These are topical things that people are searching for, or things that people need help with. Things that suggest that they might have an impact on kind of heart health as well, that are going to allow them to reach people, which it will then be able to expose to a donation ask. So they're always trying to be interesting first and grow that audience. This can be done, in an arts and heritage context just as easily, in fact, more easily in some cases, because you're sat on such a lot of interesting works and interesting content. The Tate did a great quiz during lockdown, a psychotherapist they work with, to assess your mood and to match it to a Tate artwork, which I thought was a really clever thing. And this did the rounds on social media with people sharing which artworks most match their mood. Some examples from smaller organisations here. Waterloo Uncovered here uploaded a bunch of lectures that they got some experts that they work with during lockdown, and made those available on their website and regularly released them. The Church's Conservation Trust here have a bunch of great lectures on their YouTube channel, which they've managed to amass nearly 1,000 subscribers of, which is really great work. So yeah, don't think that this is all on you as well. You know, lean on your experts, your creators, your conservationists, your artists to create some of this content for you. Do make sure you riff off and respond to what's topical, because sometimes this can really help from a fundraising perspective. There's a Facebook page called Men Behaving Dadly, where a guy called Simon Harris writes and shares kind of funny jokes and memes and stuff that you know, relate to being a dad and raising kids. And he put something out about during the time where Nigel Farage was talking about how the RNLI shouldn't be saving refugees. And he raised, you know, over £120,000 for the RNLI to buy a hovercraft called the Flying Farage. Thankfully, he gave them a bit more flexibility in how they spent his donations, because A, hovercrafts are not great for channel rescues, and B, that's not where they needed the money. So yeah, but building on what's topical and working with people like Simon Harris who are good at riffing off what's topical is a good strategy for keeping interesting and not just making you repeated ask for money. One other thing that you might want to do that can be very powerful to help you reach out is to use influencers. That is people who are popular online. Maybe they've got a popular website or a popular social media account. So let's say this is you, this tiny little bird tweeting alone in the vast grey void, which is sometimes what it can feel like. Wouldn't it be more powerful if instead of just doing that, we could whisper into the ear of somebody who had a really popular account, maybe a local newspaper, school, pub, local celebrity, something like that, who would be prepared to share our campaign on our behalf. That would reach far more people, maybe people that were new to us as well, and it would also make our fundraising message more credible, because it wasn't just us saying, please give us some money. It was somebody saying, these guys are great, I think you should give them money. And that's a bit more persuasive, isn't it? If you're a local organisation, you're based in a locality, which I know is something that's, you know, more unique to kind of heritage and conservation and arts organisations, just banging in the names of some of the suburbs, towns, county that you're in onto Facebook, onto Twitter, onto TikTok, just to see who's based in those areas that's running a popular thing. And I just did this for Brighton and Hove because I could see we had a few people from Brighton on the call. And here's a starting point for you. You can see that the council, the local football team, a market, an LGBT charity, buy and sell pages, what's on guides, all have really popular pages there. And they may very well be willing to share news about your campaign, given it's in a good cause and it's a local kind of entity that's doing it. You can also pay for social media ads in order to reach more people. This is something to be a little cautious of, though, because actually paying for social media ads doesn't really work if you're just asking people to donate money to you. Even the big charities can't make it work. And that's why you've probably noticed, like you can see with the 3 examples on screen now, the bigger charities tend to use paid social media ads in order to kind of build their audience or to sell things that are quite fun, like lotteries or competitions. And they don't buy ads to ask for money. So you know, do think about that. Don't do the obvious thing and buy a bunch of ads driving to a donation campaign and then wonder why it's not working. Try a bit more of a clever approach like these people. There's a great thing called the Facebook ad library, which you can Google for. And Facebook has to publish all of the ads people buy on it. So you can basically look at any big charity and see all the adverts that they've bought on Facebook. This is really good because they're spending a fortune figuring out what works, what messages work, what products work. You can just like steal their homework basically by looking at it on Facebook ad library. So do check that out. Don't neglect your email list. Email is still one of the highest conversion things that you can do to raise awareness of your campaign or your cause. So make sure you get an email out. Just a bit of a tip for you, a trend in fundraising emails is to make them look more like a regular or a normal email. So do think about that. You know, if you make it look like an email that your CEO or that you have just penned to the individual, they're less likely to write it off as spam or a generic newsletter, and that's why you can see that trend. So that's just a quick tip if you're already doing some email stuff. And speaking of email, building an audience is not just about being interesting all the time, although that is a big part of it. Once we've been interesting and we've attracted people to our cause, we actually want to make sure that we can talk to them. So so do think about, like, how can we capture them so that we can keep that conversation going and we're not just relying on them to stumble across our website again. So that could be by encouraging them to follow us on social media, or it could be getting them to subscribe to our newsletter. So yeah, if we think about that attract, convince, convert model that I talked about before, I'm going to just change that slightly and add a little something to it. I'm going to add this loop, which I'm calling capture. You can see that on screen now, right? So if we're attracting them to our website or our social media pages, let's encourage them to kind of follow us, to become a fan, or to sign up to our email newsletter. And then that means we can keep reaching them with content, and that means we get more opportunity to convince them, and eventually they'll convert. There's an old adage that it takes 7 exposures to a marketing message before somebody makes a purchase. So actually, you know, we can really accelerate that and make sure that happens if we're the one in the driving seat by getting them to subscribe to some of our digital content. A good way to do that is to have an email subscription form on your website. So you can see some examples of this here from some of the people that are on this call and some other arts and heritage organisations. If you don't have a proper email newsletter list, then I can really recommend signing up to a tool called Mailchimp. I'll put that in the chat. Mailchimp is a free tool if you've got less than, I think it's 2,500 subscribers, and they have non-profit discounts as well. And that basically manages your list for you. It gives you a form to embed on your website. If people unsubscribe, it deals with that for you. It has a drag and drop builder, so you can build your emails and make them look nice. So that's something to sign up to if you're still doing newsletters the old-fashioned way, or if you don't have a newsletter yet at all. And this stuff works. You know, research we did found that people are 29% more likely to donate online if they interact with a charity on social media. So yeah, do make sure you're regularly communicating with people if you expect them to give to you. The last thing that I'm going to do, and the last thing that we've got time for, is to talk a little bit about making ourselves more persuasive to our audience. So we've got a product, we've got a great new, I don't know, friends scheme or crowdfunding page or subscription product. And we've looked at how we get some people to learn about our organisation and to end up on that page. The next thing that we need to do is we need to be a bit more persuasive to increase the percentage of the people that are exposed to that product that actually decide to buy it, that actually decide to give us that donation. So the first thing to do, and this should be a real feature in your strategy, is to think about what your case for support is. You've got to know why people should give to you. If you're not clear on why people should give to you and why it's a really compelling idea to give to you, then that's not going to come across in your messaging. So take the RNLI here. You always remember the one you couldn't reach with a photo of one of their kind of heroic, I've forgotten the word now, lifeguards, sea rescuers, whatever the proper word is for that. Your donation today can give crews the best possible chance to save everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Volunteer crew. That is the word I was looking for. So, you know, that's a really clear reason why you should support them and why you should support them at Christmas, because your donation gives these really brave people the best chance they can to make sure we save every life. That's so compelling. And I know it's more difficult for you because perhaps what you're doing is less dramatic or less urgent, but there's still ways that you can bring that importance to life, you know, using a good case for support. You can also do it quite badly. So here's an example where somebody's not really thought through why someone should give and just sort of filled the box on their website. Explore the many ways you can help to support the incredibly rich and varied heritage. Get involved in heritage. I mean, some people love heritage and might be persuaded by that, but I think that deserves a little bit more thought in terms of why should people care about this cause? Why are we the ones to actually help them actualize that care? And, you know, what is the difference that they're going to make in the world? And why should they do it right now? Those are some good thoughts around developing a clearer kind of internal sense about why people should give to you. And once you've done that thinking, that will just come out in everything that you write from that point forward. Make sure that all of the conversion points on your website, so that is the places where people go in order to kind of give a donation or to sign up to be a friend, are digital. Most of you had a conversion point on your website that was digital for giving money to your organization, which is great, just as a one-off donation. But many of you didn't have a conversion point for things like signing up to be a friend or a volunteer or doing a sponsored challenge. If you don't have a digital form, a way that they can just sign up to do it online there and then then you'll end up just losing a huge amount of people because they'll be browsing at 3 o'clock in the morning and it won't be office hours to contact you, or they just won't get round to sending you the email. So you need to kind of capture their interest there and then. Lakeland Arts have a really good online donation process, but in order to become a friend, you have to download and fill in a PDF, which, so if you're on the call, Lakeland Arts, then that's something to maybe work on. You can see that form there. It's quite an intimidating one as well. And there's two kinds of digital conversion points that you can have. One is on-site, so that is the forums on your website, and that's the best place to start. If you click through your website after this call, just see how many of those things that you can do immediately online that you're asking people to benefit the organization. And you can have some off-site ones as well, like Facebook fundraising, a sponsorship platform, things of that nature. So, both of those count as conversion points. You can see the Foundation for Jewish Heritage that I think are on the call. You're using PayPal, so you've got a clear thing on your website with quite a good call to action. You're involved in a race against time to save Jewish heritage sites in danger, but can only be done with your support. I really like that because it feels really urgent. And then you link people off to a PayPal page where you can actually, give money to do that. So just some quick fire tips now on persuasion, and then we'll open for questions. So don't paralyze people with choice. If you give them too many ways to donate, they will take none of them because they will just get paralyzed by looking at what the best way to do it is. Make sure you're donor focused with your calls to action. So think about, what's in it for the donor. So two good examples of that are on screen right now. Save lives, declutter yours. Here's how to donate to our charity shops. And be part of the world's greatest bank job. Join the Robin Hood tax campaign, which I think are really clever ways to do it. I've talked about urgency a lot, so I'm not going to repeat that one. A powerful tip for you is using social proof. So don't make the mistake of going, woe is us, we need tens of millions of pounds and we can't do it without your support. Talk about how many other people in that community or who care about that heritage are giving money to you, because that actually inspires more people to do it because it feels like something that everyone is doing. And we call this social proof. Like Charity Water here, that actually publish on their website how many tens of thousands of people have already given them a load of money. It feels quite counterintuitive, but actually that's the best way to encourage donations. So that's pretty much all I've got time for. I'm going to open up for questions now, so do get those into the chat. Whilst we think about questions, I'm just going to put a recap sheet on here that covers some of the pointers that I've given you in this session. All of these slides will be made available to you. I believe this recording will be made available to you. And I'm also going to make available to you a free copy of my book, which in the back sort of 30 pages has a fill-in digital strategy. So you can fill that in with well, you could print it out and fill it in with a pen, or you could kind of type over the top of it in the PDF. And that goes through step by step how to set some of those targets for your digital fundraising and what actions to take. So hopefully, with the benefit of this session, plus that template, you should be able to get into a really practical place with your with improving your digital fundraising. So, do we have any questions?
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for that. That was great. We do have a few questions, actually. Let me have a look through some of them. But yeah, if anyone else does have questions, please do just pop them in the Q&A box now. Okay, so the first one we had was from Jeremy, which was, what are your thoughts on something like a 200 club? Is it worth scrapping that in favor of a lottery? And I believe a 200 club is when people put in like £2 per month, and then you sort of like, yeah, they kind of like round up the money and then you have a chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think lotteries tend to seem to outperform those. So, but I think rather than kind of ditch it, see if there's a way that you can transition the existing subscribers to that product onto, more exciting kind of, lottery product. Because, yeah, lotteries tend to make hundreds of thousands of pounds when they're executed right, because they just sort of snowball the amount kind of month on month. And a lottery is a concept that people already understand. So, you had to describe to me there what the 200 Club was, whereas it was just called a lottery or a raffle. People already have a kind of hook into that.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, thank you for your question, Jeremy. So the next one, this might be, this might take a lot more work, but how can we make the most of Google ad grants? This might not be
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, that, and the rules keep changing with it. There are organisations that can support you with that, where you pay a fee to them every month and they manage your ad grants account for you. I know that budgets can sometimes be challenging, so do think about like how the investment in that could perhaps pay off for you in terms of paying for itself. Google Ad Grants tend to work best when you work on the long tail search terms. So don't think about charity donation. Think about like having hundreds of ads set up for lots of specific words. Things in your collection, topics that relate to the collection, things in your local area. Because the people that are searching for those very specific things will be more likely to see your ad, and they will more likely to be kind of motivated to click through and therefore kind of connect with what you're doing. You will also want to make sure that you prominently feature on pages that they end up in calls to action. That could be a call to action to donate, so they could end up on like an object page talking about a particular object in the collection. But you want to make sure that it's like, hey, if you want to preserve objects like this one in our collection, it costs us a fortune to keep this tapestry safe. You can help us by donating to us. Or you could go further and subscribe to our newsletter to get a weekly spotlight on some other objects like this, if you wanted to just have a softer ask where you capture their contact details so that you can work on getting them to donate over time.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, let's look for another question. Another question is, from those ideas that you provided, how many do you think a small charity can do at the same time?
Oh, that's a really tough question.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not all of them. Not even big charities can do all of them. So definitely, I would be focusing on setting up the basics, getting your single donation and your regular donation set up. I think friend schemes work really well for the kind of organisations that we've got on the call. So that's probably like one that I would focus on. And then I would maybe focus on the ones where other people are doing the work for you. So where you've got like sponsored challenges, obviously that turns your audience into the fundraiser for you. So I'd be thinking definitely, at least doing one of those, because that's really important. Perhaps setting up Facebook fundraising so people can be inspired to do their own challenges without needing to talk to you, or they do your fundraising. Thinking about corporate sponsors, because they'll do some of the work for you. So, I might say maybe like 5 or 6 of those might be a realistic kind of target to do in parallel. But what kind of volunteering opportunities do you have? You've got people that volunteer to kind of stand at the door of your museum, perhaps, checking tickets. Could you set up a volunteering opportunity that's about donor stewardship, or helping to kind of run or support one of these events, so that you can kind of share the load with some of your volunteers and build your bandwidth to do more of these activities? That could be a thought for you. There's lots of very digitally savvy younger people that are itching to kind of volunteer. So yeah, perhaps reaching out to see if there's any of those that might want to help could be a way to be able to do more of them.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I think we probably have time for like one more. Okay, so Dawn has an interesting question, which is there an optimum percentage split between interesting content and asks on social media? We have a debate going at the moment between our fundraising team and comms team. Comms is resistant to asking and causing fatigue, but we are not bringing in what we could from social.
This is the classic age-old comms versus fundraising thing. Every charity's got it. Don't feel too disheartened. I think a 4-to-1 ratio. So 4 pieces of interesting content to 1 sort of ask is a good ratio as a kind of maximum number of asks on something. I think a minimum would be a kind of 1 in 10. Don't just ask for money. Also ask for people to sign up to the newsletter or sign up to a petition, because then you'll end up getting more that way, because you'll be developing a relationship, not just kind of getting donations from the 1 or 2 people that are ready to give. Direct asks on social media for money don't tend to work so well, so use the other asks to build the relationship to get it to a point where they will.
Okay, thank you. Right, we probably have time for one more. Rebecca is asking, we're going to do a Christmas appeal via our website Just Giving page. Any top tips, given that it's a fiercely competitive time? It's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, linking it into to your, appealing to your existing audience, linking it into your local community or topic area, so you're reaching a particular group of people deeply who won't necessarily, be being targeted with such a specific Christmas appeal, I think is good. Trying to find the urgency in it. Why do you need to raise that money before Christmas? It's a tricky thing, but you know, sometimes you can find a way to kind of spin it to kind of make that happen. And I would just like outcompete them in terms of content, even if it's low quality content, even if it's a picture of a bunch of you in the office wearing like tinsel and reindeer ears, like, and getting that out on your social media or something. You know, the more times that you're in somebody's kind of eye line digitally, the more opportunities you have to kind of reconnect them to that campaign. So those would be a few tips.
Hey, thank you so much. I think that might be all we have time for today. It's at 11:15. But thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Hopefully, we'll collect some of the other. Oh, go
I'm
ahead,
just going to
Matt.
quickly share my Twitter
Yeah,
on
go
here.
ahead. Yeah,
I've got a pinned tweet on that Twitter account, which is where you can download the book, which you can see a screenshot of there, which has that strategy template. And I know some of you wanted advice about where to focus or what to do next. That book's a really good place to start. So yeah, do download a copy of that.
cool. Thanks so much, Matt. And just to reiterate, we will try to we'll make the recording and slides available to you soon, so you can revisit this at some point. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining. We'll collect all the sort of chat information and questions and try and get to those as well.
Yeah, I'll spend some time responding to some of the questions that I didn't get time to answer, particularly those ones that you had about feeling a bit overwhelmed or where do I start. So keep an eye out for those answers.
Thank you so much, Matt. Right. Have a lovely day,
Thanks.
everyone. Thanks so much for this.
No worries. Great to see you all. Good luck with it.
Bye.
Bye.